Hello, today I am going to be presenting the predicting movie performance, which is an implementation of machine learning and linear regression. This actually uses dual linear regression models to predict the outcome of Rotten Tomato ranking and um, uh, domestic box office sales for movie performances. So first, I wanted to go over an overview of the film industry. Essentially, what's relevant about developing machine learning algorithms to produce these types of results. So the film industry is a $2.9 billion industry. Each year, there are roughly 300 plus movies released to the general public, resulting in over 200 million box office tickets sold within 2021 alone. So that basically means that YouTube trailers have become one of the largest marketing strategies for movies in terms of getting their brand across, getting the movie across to the general public. So going further into the relevance, on April 4th, 2020, the first trailer for the Sonic movie was released. So this was considered a catastrophic failure, considering the fact that social media was at an outrage on how it originally looked. Not only did they think it didn't resemble the character, but it was actually kind of creepy looking in its own right. And the feedback was actually from the trailer was so intense that it caused the studio to do a complete redesign of the character. This eventually cost the studio $35 million to fix and resulted in major setbacks to production. Overall, the result ended up pretty well, though, considering the fact that the movie ended up at revenue of $154 million in box office sales. So this really shows the power and the motive behind understanding your audience in the movie industry, what they are looking for and what they are expecting, and essentially what you're giving them. So what are the goals of this project? So essentially, I want to understand, can marketing a movie trailer still produce adequate profit even though the movie is viewed as overall bad in the public eye after release? Is it possible to predict movie outcomes and movie performance, such as Rotten Tomato and net profit, based off Twitter reviews? In this case, it would actually be YouTube comments of the trailer. Is it possible to predict these things, how it'll impact the entertainment industry? The more accurate these models get, will it mean that movie industries will start focusing on certain groups? That's the type of questions that I look to answer. So some of the methodology used in this case would be the YouTube API, Pandas, Beautiful Soup, which is for HTML parsing, Cilium, which is a Google Chrome extension used to basically essentially pull the YouTube comments without the use of the API, YouTube API. This was mostly established due to the YouTube API having a data cap, data limit to how much data you can pull every day. PySpark linear regression machine learning libraries, this is where the dual linear regression models come in, and vector assembler, which is basically used to put together all of the data into dense vectors so that the linear regression models can basically process and train and teach the models as needed. So the linear regression process, basically, as the project as a whole, how does everything flow together? So I basically separated this into 3 different steps. The first step is data acquisition. So that's pulling your data, pulling your YouTube codes from the API. This is done for both the 2020 data and the 2022 data. Pulling the YouTube comments. This is done using, again, the Google Chrome Python extension, and is basically done for the 154 movies for 2020 alone. So this part is kind of a trade-off, considering the fact that the tool does take quite a long time to run. So it's a trade-off between how much data you have and the complete runtime of this step. Rotten Tomatoes, this uses a beautiful soup HTML parser to essentially pull the metadata from the web links to achieve the Rotten Tomato ranks for training the linear regression models. Data processing. So this is the step after the data acquisition, and essentially the data processing takes a list of 2,000 plus common words, does a sentiment analysis on the words, and basically ranks them in accordance to negative connotation from -5 to extremely positive connotation to 5 to determine the comment relevance. And then after that, both the Rotten Tomato ranking and the comment relevance is put into the first linear regression model, which will basically take the comment array and produce predictions for the Rotten Tomato, or it will train to produce predictions for the Rotten Tomato rating. The second model uses both the Rotten Tomato and the comment array to train the model to essentially predict the gross revenue based off of those two fields. So essentially, in practicality, the last step uses both models to predict the outcomes for the performance for both the net revenue and the Rotten Tomatoes for the movies in 2020. Essentially, this works by first pushing the comment data through Model 1 to get the predictions for the Rotten Tomato, and then using the predictions for Rotten Tomato along with the comments through Model 2 to produce the predictions for the gross revenue. So these are the CSV results provided by the Python scripts. As you can see, the movie ratings are pulled for the Rotten Tomatoes. YouTube codes are appended to that CSV. And the comments, as you can see at the bottom, are pulled directly from the YouTube trailer comments. And the resulting word rating is also provided at the final CSV output. So after the machine learning models have been trained, essentially they were split into two different test data sets. The first data set contained 70% of the data. The second data set contained 30% of the data. These were used to cross-reference each other. So the model can essentially be tested for accuracy. So what you see on the blue line is the actual. What you see on the orange line is the predicted value. This was done twice, first for the Rotten Tomato ranking, secondly for the domestic box office outcomes. As you can see, there is some variance between the data, but for the most part, the domestic box office seems to be pretty close to the actual and predicted values. So the next step was to essentially split the 2020 data of bad movies and good movies. Dataset 1 contained the movie titles for movies that were expected to be bad movies released in 2020, 2022. And the second dataset contained data containing titles that were movies that were expected to perform very well in 2022. So essentially, these were put through a keyword occurrence analysis. So what this is doing is taking the number of occurrences of the keyword based off of YouTube comments and graphing them for both data sets for the worst predicted movie for each data set and the best predicted movie for each data set. As you can see, the performance between the two is pretty conclusive in terms of how they performed for their data set. The good data set performed, even in the worst case, better than the bad data set on the best case, which in this case is Thunder Force in orange.